All right, so today I'm going to share with you how I took my own clinical practice from this, all orange, not showing up in any local search results, to this, all green, number one, showing up at the top of local search results in New York City, which ultimately means more business, a thriving practice, more referrals, right? And so in today's video, I'm going to share with you what I did and how I did it so that you can go ahead and do this for your own practice so you can grow and thrive as well. This video, no funny business. We're going to dive right into the details. This is going to be webinar style, no edits or anything like that. So if I stumble across my words or I have to fumble across the screens a little bit, I do sincerely apologize, but I do promise that you're going to get a lot of value out of this video and you'll be able to do this for your own business after watching it. Okay, so let me dive right in and actually show you my notes. Okay, so the first thing we actually have to understand, and also I say actually a lot. I don't know why I do that, but I apologize. If that annoys you, I sincerely apologize. I'm working on it. So the first thing we actually have to talk about is basic or universal. I use the word universal here, but we can think about this as general SEO, right? And local SEO. So there is this broad concept of SEO, search engine optimization, but then we can bucket this into two other categories, basic or universal, not basic, but universal or kind of general SEO, and then local SEO. And we're going to talk about that right now. So universal would kind of mean that location doesn't really matter. To give you an example, let's imagine I ran an online store that sold notebooks. So for me, the customers could be located anywhere, right? It didn't matter if someone was searching for a new notebook in Kentucky or they were searching for a new notebook in Missouri or New York. It didn't matter, right? They can buy my notebook no matter where they're sitting. So I wouldn't worry too much about local search results if I was if I was running an online notebook shop. However, if I was running a diner, sorry, there's also a bug in my apartment. I thought it was a bird. If I was running a diner in New York, right, where people come to eat, well then, like kind of this general SEO or this, non-location based SEO is not that important. We really need to focus on local SEO, meaning I need to show up in the results in my location. And we actually can work on this. We can work on local SEO proactively. There's separate strategies and there's strategies specific to local SEO, which is what I'm going to share with you in a second, right? And so why does this matter for therapists? Well, Google identifies therapy practices very much like a diner. They identify therapy practices as a local business. Right? Now, I know a lot of us have gone online since the pandemic. It doesn't really matter. Google still identifies you as a local brick and mortar business. I'm going to make that more clear in just a little bit. But let me actually demonstrate what I mean by all of this. So let me pull up my internet right here. Nope, not that one. Let's pull up this one. And what I've done in this window here is, let's not zoom in like that. I have typed in anxiety therapy. This is incognito mode, right? So it's all the results are gonna be, really good. So I typed in anxiety therapy, right? This is a term someone might type in if they're looking for a therapist. They might type in depression therapy or whatever the issue is in therapy, right? And let me kind of walk you through some of the results. So at the very top, you're gonna get sponsored results, right? These are people paying for Google ads. And you can see how much real estate this takes up, right? Now, if you scroll down past that, at the very top, right, below the sponsored results, but at the top of the organic results are these. That's what we're going to talk about today, right? It says places. So because Google identified that anxiety therapy search as a local search, they're going to start to show these three results right here. These are Google My Business profiles, okay? Now, we're going to talk about how they interlink with your website and all that, but these are Google My Business listings, and three of them show up at the top of search results. And let's be honest, most people are not going to scroll past this. They're going to give these people a call. They're going to go to their websites, this kind of thing. Now, if we scroll down further, right, we have this kind of people ask section, which is, it doesn't really matter if we show up there. Now, these are more kind of knowledge-based inquiries. And then down below, now we have the websites, right? So this video, we're going to focus on how you can show up here at this top spot. And like I showed you earlier, for my business, right, we started ranking number 1, which means that we were, well, let's go back. We are showing up right here, this very top spot. And this is when you will start to see calls, more inquiries, and a growing business. But this is local SEO. And just to recap, Google identifies your practice, a therapy practice, as local SEO. So that's why it matters for us as therapists. So what is our main goal? Our main goal is to show up on the maps. I know that's a bit of a long-winded introduction to local SEO, but I think we need that foundation before we dive into the actual tips. All right, so let's actually dive into the practices and things like that. So number one, those map pack listings that I'm showing you, I said this before, they're a Google My Business profile. This is a free listing. You have to sign up for it. You can just type in Google My Business if you don't have one already, and you can sign up. Okay. Now, with the Google My Business, there's not like a direct button you click to connect it to your website, but there are ways that you make the Google My Business and the website kind of communicate with each other. We'll talk about that in just a second, right? And we also want this Google My Business profile to be optimized. We'll talk about that in a second. But what we're really talking about for local SEO is a Google My Business profile, okay? Now, the other thing you have to know is that keywords are very important. So our Google My Business profile is not, we don't want it to show up for anything and everything, right? If we can get really nuanced here, right? So if I don't do any EMDR in my practice, so I don't want to show up in results for EMDR therapy, right? I do a lot of ADHD therapy in my practice, so I do want to show up when someone searches ADHD therapy. Now, if we go back to the original map that I showed you here, if I scroll up, you'll notice that we are showing up number one for the exact keyword that we want to show up for, ADHD therapy. So our Google My Business profiles, right, are directly tied to these keywords, which is hopefully tied to your specialty. All right. Now, we'll talk about that more in just a second. So let's go back to our notes. And so I'm kind of giving you the understanding of how the Google My Business works. All right. It's tied to different keywords. And again, we want those keywords to be for our specialty. And so the keywords we choose are critical. All right. Now, with all that, let's actually talk about how I went about doing this. All right. We can kind of break this down into 4 steps. Okay. Number one is what I would consider a complete Google My Business optimization. Now, there is not one way to do this. I want that to be clear too. There are definitely different strategies for showing up number one. This is the strategy that I used, and it obviously worked. So I'm walking you through it. But the other thing is this, people kind of, we also do Google optimization for people, or Google My Business optimization. You know, the way we do it might be slightly different than how another person does it. So I do want to let you know that there's not like a formula, although there is a strategy, all right, and there's best practices and things like that. All right. So number one, and this is where we're going to talk a bit about an address for those of you who are doing virtual. So we need our Google My Business to be verified. Okay. Now, there are 2 ways to have a Google My Business. One, you can have an address at a brick and mortar location. And most people are going to tell you that this is required to actually rank in search results. Now, I've done a lot of research. There are mixed reviews about this. Some people will say you need a local business address and an actual storefront, not a storefront, but you need a place where you can see clients, like an actual office, in order to show up in these rankings. All right. And then you can also start a Google My Business through what's called a service area. So rather than having an address listed, you have like a zip code or something like that. And you can certainly set up a Google My Business and get it verified that way. But a lot of people will say that that won't actually show up in search results. All right. Like I said, some mixed reviews, but there are 2 ways you can get this Google My Business verified: with an address and without an address. Now, I do recommend, more bugs. I do recommend that people try their best to get an address and an office location where they could see people, even if they are virtual, okay? Now, there are some ways we can do this. Google has become very strict. So what they usually require is for you to film a video of the actual office space. So like WeWorks or these big office shares don't always work. There are some smaller office shares where it does work. All right, so if you are looking for, one of the best, most cost-effective ways to do this is to find an office share that has been able to get businesses verified for Google My Business. These are typically office shares where you pay on an as needed basis, right? So if you're a virtual therapist and you find one of these office shares, what you usually do is you sign the agreements, all the paperwork, and then you just rent it out if you need to see people in person. Now, if you're all virtual and you don't ever see people, you won't ever need to do it. But at the end of the day, you might be able to use that address for your Google My Business listing. So if you're looking into it, make sure you ask the actual office share if you're able to get your Google My Business verified. They probably have had people ask before. So that's one cost-effective way to do it for an all virtual practice. And then some of us just have an office space. You don't have an issue there. You're right there. I've heard of other people kind of connecting with other service providers. But I do try to encourage people, if you're able to get an actual office address, that's probably the best way to go. So that's how we're going to get our verification. So if you have an address, right, a physical address, the verification is going to require you to film a video and send it to Google. If you're a service area, they're just going to send you basically a postcard to an address that you list. It's not public. And then you kind of type in the code once you get the letter. Okay. But verification is actually required. If you're not verified, you're not going to show up at all. Okay. The other thing we need to think about is what is called the category selection. Now, I'm not going to run you through all the details of optimizing a profile. I will make another video about that, but I'm going to give you a lot. So let me actually pull up a Google My Business profile for you. So this is a Google My Business profile that I started for my consulting business, right, for this YouTube kind of business here. It is not verified right now. It is not optimized, but it will at least show you what I'm talking about. So the first thing I mentioned is this category. Now, what is a category? If you look under here, it says consultant, right? So I had to pick a category, and you can pick multiple categories. So if I go into edit profile right here, you'll notice right here, this section, business category, I've picked 3: marketing agency, consultant, marketing. Right now, as a therapist, there are multiple that might apply. And so what you want to do is you want to go in and you want to pick the main categories that apply. So I know there's like psychotherapist, mental health clinic. And what you want to do is you want to go ahead and you want to select all the categories that apply to your service. So you'll pick a primary, right? For a lot of people, it's a psychotherapist or something like that. And then you could pick the secondary ones that also relate to your business. So sometimes therapists only have one category selected, or they don't have the right one. And so you want to make sure your category is correct, all right? And you have all of the ones that apply selected. Next, we have, let me go back to my notes, a service list and descriptions. So let me share with you what I'm talking about here. So let's go back to the profile. That's not it. It's right here. Now you'll notice at the top, so this is a Google My Business. This is kind of, it looks like the internet, but this is how you edit your profile. So if we go into this section here, edit services, right? You're going to notice my category selected, right? And then what you can do, you'll notice this button, it says add, I'm kind of blocking it with my head, but it says add custom service. You can click this, and let's just say this is a therapy practice. We'll type in anxiety therapy, and we can click save. And so what you'll notice that under my primary category, we now have a service, okay? And if we click into that service, you can now write a description, all right? Now, you want all of this to be filled out completely. Now, there are certain ways to do this. There is strategy involved here. I will hopefully make another video all about that strategy. But you can notice here, we can add multiple services underneath our categories. And so what we really want is all of our services to be our specialties, basically. And then we want those specialties and services to match what's written on our website. So let's imagine we have a website and we have a page about anxiety therapy. We want that service to be anxiety therapy here. And this is one of the ways in which your Google My Business starts to communicate with your website, right? It's consistent across the board. So you want to make sure all your services are filled out and all the service descriptions are filled out as well. Okay. Now, like I said, there are strategies for doing that, and I'll make another video about that. I also have on here products. Now, products is another section on the Google My Business. I don't have it available on this profile, right? But on most therapy practice profiles, you will see another button that says products. And what you can do is you can click into that, and your service or your therapy specialty can be a product. And you can kind of create those. Now, there's different opinions on whether or not this helps and whether or not, therapy services can be products. But for most people, I have found that adding the product is helpful. And again, your service, your therapy service can be the product. So you want to make sure that's filled out as well. Now, again, I'm walking you through the strategy that I used and what worked for me. Okay. So next, photos. And this one is pretty self-explanatory, right? We want our Google My Business profile to have good photos, a headshot. If it is a location-based business, a picture of the building or the office space. Again, you want this profile to look alive. You want it to look friendly and inviting. So photos that you can add, a logo, right? And every so often updating your photos. You can actually add videos as well. Really, so anything to make that, more attractive and more appealing to people would be really, really great. The other thing I have on here, you're seeing it now, filling out all fields completely. So let me actually go back. So we talked about the services and we talked about the products, which are not showing here. But if we go into the edit profile button, there's a whole bunch of different things in here. You want to make sure that this is filled out. It's not complex information, but you want to make sure this is filled out as completely as possible. So if it applies, make sure it's filled out. You want to make sure the description is very important. So you want to make sure that this is filled out properly. Again, there's a strategy for that. I will talk about it in another video. But you want to make sure your information is filled out as completely as possible. Okay. So in a high level way, that is a Google My Business optimization. Now, like I said, there are different strategies for these different things we need to fill out. One of the things we do for people is this, right? So it's a decent amount of work. So if you're interested in that Google My Business optimization service, now we're happy to do that for you. You can reach out. There's a link down below. Set up a free call. But this is kind of walking you through what that entails. The second thing I did is what we would call link building. Now, you've probably heard of backlinking and things like that. At the end of the day, backlinking or getting links is one way Google kind of verifies your business has authority. Now, you can think about backlinks as complex as trying to get a reputable site to link back to your website. So this is totally hypothetical, but let's imagine WebMD linked back to my website. WebMD is a huge website. If they linked to me, that would show Google that my website has some authority, right? And now that's like the really challenging backlinks to get and to try to get all that. But there's a more simple way of backlinking as well, which is kind of, you do it in addition, but there's some low-hanging fruit. So sites like Yelp, Google My Business, Apple Businesses. There's tons of other listing sites, right, that you can, hundreds. Now, I was able to get listed on, I think, about 35 or 40 other listing sites, and I made sure that all the information there, I should write this down actually, it's called the NAP, the NAP, which is simply, you're seeing all this, yep, name, address, I'm not spelling that correctly, right, and phone number. You want to make sure that that is spelled correctly, or that those are all the same across your website, your listings, and so on and so forth. That's called the NAP. And so I made sure that I was verified. Not all of them require verification, but Yelp and then tons of other sites, I was able to get listed and my business listed with the same name, address, and phone number. And then those listings demonstrate more authority. Another listing I was able to get, which you could get as well, which has a huge impact, is Chamber of Commerce. Now, there is a fee to join the Chamber of Commerce in most areas, but once you join the Chamber of Commerce, you then get listed on their directory of businesses, and that has huge authority, all right? So my link building was very impactful in showing up in the search results, okay? Now, if you need help, we also are able to provide a service to help with listings and things like that. You can reach out to us and we'll talk more about that. Number 3 is what I would consider a website connection. Now, again, there's no button that we click or any kind of like formal connection we make, but there's a few ways we can connect our website and our Google My Business, and I've talked a bit about this, but one way we can do it is embedding our GMB map on our website. So if you go to our practice website and you scroll to the bottom of the footer, you'll notice that our Google My Business is embedded into that website. And there's a way to generate, let me actually just show you while we're at it here. So if I wanted to share this, we could, let me see, if I click share, no, that just copies the link. If I click these ellipses, Give me a second, folks. Let's see. It's not this one. I can't find it at the, is it here? Where is it? Is it here? No, you know, it actually might be in the maps. I don't want to lose this, but if I click the map here real quick. Okay, so I clicked into the map. If I click share now, does it work? Yes, if I click share now, then I can go to embed map. It will give you a code where you can embed it into your website. A little bonus tip for you, okay? And so you can embed it. And then the other thing we have to be really mindful of is the keywords. And like I said before, we were not going for any therapy service. We were going specifically for ADHD therapy. So you'll notice that, well, you can't see it, but in our service listings, we have ADHD therapy on our Google My Business profile, and the description mentions ADHD therapy. And then our website, we have a page all about ADHD therapy, right? So our website has a page by itself for ADHD therapy, and it has, you know, it's written very thoroughly about ADHD therapy. So in that regard, Google My Business is now embedded on the site, right? So it kind of communicates that way. Google is able to see that my business does ADHD therapy. It notices my Google My Business does ADHD therapy, and those all work together through some Google magic or whatever. All right, but that's one of the ways. So you want to make sure your keywords are thoughtful. You have pages that match your services and things like that. Okay. The other thing I was doing was consistently blogging or creating content. In my case, for my private practice, it was regular blog creation, right? And the blogs would often be about ADHD therapy, this kind of thing. And so a lot of keywords were used, and I was putting them out consistently about once a week, right? And again, targeting those relevant keywords. And so what was happening was, as I worked on all 4 of these things, right? And I did these 4 things, what happened? Let's see, this happened. And I started to show up number 1 for ADHD therapy in local search results, okay? And before I was actively doing this, I was showing up at the bottom, right? When it's orange, it means I wasn't showing up at all. Number 5, number 4, number 6. And if we scroll back even further, that's not a good map ranking, but still all red, not showing up at all, right? And so this strategy has me now showing up number 1. Okay, so I hope that this video was helpful for you. I know I just rambled on for 22 minutes. Wow. Well, I hope the video was helpful for you, and I hope you learned something. I hope this encourages you, to really grow your practice and to do the things you need to do. If you want help with any of this, we do a done-for-you service. We can do this for you. I know it might be a little overwhelming to get started. Google My Business optimization is something you do for a lot of folks, in addition to tons of other things. It's a bespoke service. So if you want more information about that, link down below, set up a free call, and we can chat through that. But yeah, this is how I did it. I hope this was helpful. I will see you in the next video.